What's up everybody, Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick and I have an album review for you. So one that I wanted to do as kind of like a bonus review, because I mean generally we only do 4 reviews, but here lately we're doing 5 just because, well, I mean towards the end of the year there's a lot more releases coming out, and I definitely wanted to cover this one because it's got someone I know in it, and he was kind enough to send me the last album and I really enjoyed it, so I was excited to go over this one. So we are going to go over the latest offering from The Glorious Dead, Cemetery Paths. This also comes out on the 28th of July on Bindrune Recordings. This band formed in 2006 in Traverse City, Michigan. I believe they broke up for a little while and then reformed in 2017. This is their 2nd album overall, and I know this band because Marty Worm from Heavy Metallurgy is one of the guitarists in the band. And it seems like forever ago he sent me a copy of their first album on vinyl, but also on CD. It's been sitting back here for a while, and I really dug it. And I was kind of surprised because, well, it's interesting because I've been watching Marty's videos for years, and he gets into a lot of cool stuff. And I really wasn't expecting this insanely heavy, very brutal, old school death metal from him. Just because he listens to so much, I figured, I don't know, it could be a thrash project, it could be a classic heavy metal project. Hell, he's like a giant fan of Skinny Puppy. I love Skinny Puppy too. I didn't think it was gonna be Skinny Puppy, but I really wasn't sure what I was gonna get just because he has such a diverse musical background. And what I got with their first album, Into Lifeless Shrines, was insanely heavy, old school death metal, pretty much right in the vein of bands like Morbid Angel, Hate Eternal, Immolation, Incantation, you know, the good stuff. So naturally I was excited to go over their 2nd album, and pretty much it is kind of the same bands I described there, except I think this is honestly more fine-tuned. And man, this band loves fucking riffs. And the riff work on here is very intricate, I would say bordering on technical, but also they find this cool sweet spot between brutal and melodic. There are a lot of good melodic hooks on here. The melody kind of comes out in the first track, which is an intro, and when I saw it was kind of an intro track, I was like, oh man, am I gonna have to fucking dog this immediately for having an intro? Because most of the time intros just kind of bother me, like just get to the point. But this intro is actually musical and it's really cool. There's a really interesting contrast between this very kind of like early In Flames style acoustic melody, like it's almost kind of folky, it's very sullen and dark, and spacey horror synths. So you have this really cool balance between early In Flames and like David Cronenberg and John Carpenter style synths. It's eerie and unsettling and then explodes right away into Horizons of Ash, and this song is fucking vicious. One thing I absolutely love on this entire album are the vocals. The lead vocals on here are very well pronounced, they're very sinister, they're very evil sounding, very comparable to like Ross Dolan or Steve Tucker. Actually, a good chunk of this kind of reminds me of like Steve Tucker, Morbid Angel, like Formulas Fatal to the Flesh and Gateways to Annihilation, especially in the slower, more plotting sections. But when they're heightening the aggression with like blast beats and just sinister tremolo riffs all over the place, the vocals kind of take on a Ross Dolan sort of characteristic, and that kind of goes with the meter too. He has an interesting meter in terms of like following the riff or kind of following a different pattern. It's kind of that Ross Dolan sort of thing. And me being a giant Immolation fan, I definitely have no problem with that. In fact, I kind of like that when the vocalist goes off the beat. But the riff work on here, again, is just fucking gnarly. It's very intense and very brutal, but also pulls from multiple wheelhouses. Gag on Viscera has a very For Victory style sort of bolt thrower groove to it, especially in the opening. It gets a little bit more off time and blasty later, but hearing that old school bolt thrower groove, that very triumphant, you know, tank tread rolling over a fucking whole field of bodies sort of feel, like that's always gonna fucking get me. Dragging the Dead has some like D-beat crustiness to it, and one of my favorite tracks on here, Daylight Graves, brings the death doom, and it brings it in such a cool melodic way. Like there's a lot of great lead harmonies on there, very sullen, very dreary. It kind of shifts the atmosphere too, because before that it is very aggressive. Like this band is going fast and just for the throat on every single fucking second, even when they kind of break it down to like a slower, more groovy pace. The riffs are angular, they kind of cut into you and fucking rip out your guts. Metaphorically, of course, otherwise they'd have to put like a totally different kind of warning label on this. But the whole song is more gloomy and sullen. The riffs kind of drone a little bit more. It's very oppressive and dark, and I like the whole shift in mood. And of course it gets right back to the fast, aggressive stuff, but this kind of showcases a lot in the wheelhouse of this band in terms of like death metal, because they're pulling from, again, different camps. There's even some moments of melodeath in here. Like I brought up In Flames earlier, but there are some melodies that kind of pop out on here that kind of scream like, again, early In Flames, early Dark Tranquility, early At the Gates. Purulent Forms and Corpse of the King both maintain a nasty, brutal edge, but also pepper in really just cool, catchy melodies. And not enough to like kind of like take any edge off of the brutality or make it cheesy, but rather just showing like a little bit of variety and kind of getting outside of like what I would say the main wheelhouse this album is, which is just vicious, old school death metal. And I would say Morbid Angel is definitely one of the big ones in here, especially the title track, which is another favorite. Honestly, some of my favorites were the longer tracks on here where they kind of expanded out a little bit. There's more, you know, like cool transitions and even some more atmosphere. Atmosphere is kind of kept to a minimal on here, like definitely the intro on here. But outside of that, a lot of it is just done with the music, like isolating riffs or, you know, kind of like fading in a little bit. But there's really not that much up until you get down to Cemetery Path. And that one has a really cool lead in. It's raining, there's church bells, there's someone walking in the mud, there's a crow that won't shut the fuck up. In fact, he pops up later on in the song and was like, you know what, we already heard from you. We're good on that, crow. We know you're fucking there. Anyway, you start hearing shoveling and then get this cool isolated growl and the song takes off. And what I like in terms of this transition into the song from this atmospheric little start here, this gloomy kind of horror setting, is all those digging noises and crows kind of fade out slowly in the background as the music comes in. And that's just a good touch there. And the song itself is awesome. In fact, I think some of the best riffs on the album are on this song. There's some great transitions to some even more brutal stuff in there, like some more like suffocation style, like heavy picking and chugs. And even when it decides to break into blast beats, it's still kind of groovy. Like you can still bob your head to this. And man, again, the doomy harmonies, when they come in, the death doom side of this band, which is kind of minimal, is really good. Like they do it exceptionally well, definitely following in the footsteps of bands like Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride. Like it's that peak level of misery death doom, like that old school, just fucking crippling depression death doom. And just to further cement that, the outro on here, Samita Pulvis, which I was like, okay, we got away with an intro, let's see if we can get away with an outro. And they did, because it's an actual song. It starts off with like, you know, a couple of chimes, which that is how the first one ends, with a couple of chimes on what I assume is the bell ride. But you hear it again, and then behind that, the music fades in, and it's a flat out slow death doom song. There are no other shifts in it. It is just a slow, brooding death doom song with alternating vocals, slow, murky riffs, some glorious fucking harmonies on it. It is just gloomy as hell, and it fades out on that and closes the album on probably the most somber of notes, but a fantastic note nonetheless. And this album got away with an intro and an outro, and I didn't bitch one bit about it. That isn't maybe entirely new, but that is pretty fucking rare. But yeah, there's a lot to really dig in this album. I think the production's really solid, though I do have some issues with the way the snare sounds. Occasionally, when, you know, the blasts come in, his snare kind of sounds like a rack tom, like kind of a small one. I don't know, like it's not like a terrible thing, like it's not a total deal breaker on the production, but it was something I noticed. But everything else on here sounds great. The guitars sound crisp, they're heavy, they're thick. The bass is very audible. In fact, there's some really clever bass lines that pop up that you can actually hear in here. And the vocals sit in like the perfect spot in the mix. This just sounds like some great old school death metal to me, and that is definitely the vibe I'm sure they were trying to capture. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. Bare minimum, this is on par with the first album, which I really enjoyed. But honestly, I think it might be just a little bit better. I think it's just, I don't know, paced a little bit better. I think the riffs are a bit tighter on here. Like, this is just a gnarly old school listen. It's very aggressive in spots, but also good pockets of melody. I love the Death Doom turns that this takes, and honestly, I could have used a little bit more of those just because I like really good Death Doom, and they did it really well. The album flows really well. It's very riffy and technical on a riff standpoint, but not like noodly and going overboard at any moment. Like, this is just firmly stuck on just being sinister and evil, and again, those vocals I think are just about fucking perfect on here for the style they're going for. I love the sound of them. I love the faster material in here, but it's the more groove-laden stuff and the longer songs in here that really stood out to me. But overall, this whole listen was absolutely fantastic, and now I'm probably gonna have to order this from Bin Room, which means I gotta make space for another vinyl, but they do send CDs with it, so that is pretty damn awesome. But yeah, if you're a big fan of Incantation, Morbid Angel, Immolation, Hate Eternal, I would even say bands like Outer Heaven too, kind of in that wheelhouse as well. Definitely check this out. It's brutal, it's catchy. This is just fucking death metal done well. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below at thrallsmetal.com, which is currently under construction, but when it does show up, our Patreon link will be there. It's also on our channel someplace, but hopefully by then we will have some shirts. I know it's taken a while, but we've got some hurdles to get past, and again, getting the money together to get all that stuff, and yeah, it's a whole fucking thing. But when we get shirts, you will know, because we will definitely do a video showing them off, and we will probably be doing a giveaway for a shirt, because why the hell not? I mean, you guys are fucking awesome. You guys keep us going. We should definitely give at least one of you a shirt. But yeah, thank you guys so much for all the support. It is fucking amazing doing this, and the love we get is still, it blows me away, and it definitely keeps us going on here. So stay tuned for a ton more content. I'm working on a bunch of stuff at once just because it's me, and I got a lot of music to listen to. But yeah, plenty coming. So once again, thank you all, and we will catch you later.